everyone, hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of my nonsense. And definitely also Beelong's nonsense. Oh my god. It's not a day that goes by that this bird does not do things that he does. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about the comparisons, or not even comparisons, but just the ways in which we can translate the concept of Christian liturgy into witchcraft ritual. Oh my goodness. Okay.
And I love you, and you're just so cute and cuddly, and oh, bye.
It's kind of been like a week. It's been several weeks, actually, because I am on the tail end of finally wrapping up a completed draft of my latest fiction project, This Is My Blood. This book is exactly for every Catholic girl who knows that it is way more fun to do some fucked up shit and then go to confession than to not do it at all and sit there cosplaying on TikTok with your fucking lace veil acting a fool. Just saying. This book is a vampire/witch romance set in Providence, Rhode Island, and I have had the time of my life writing it. I have experienced more growth as a writer, I feel like, than I have in a long time, and I definitely took a lot of inspiration in terms of the writing style and everything from Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire series, which I am currently wrapping up as we speak, about halfway through Queen of the Damned, and it's just been a wonderful ride. So that comes out July 31st. If you want to check that out, I suggest you do. But until then, we are actually here to talk about, again, liturgy, and, you know, if you go to church, how you can kind of translate that into your witchcraft practice. So, with all that said, we'll get into that in a second. First, though, let me remind you, my name is Sara Rastres, and I'm a Christian witch content creator, writer, educator, and very specifically a writer of these two books right here, which you may have heard about. You may have heard about them because they're pretty damn good at explaining exactly how Christian and witch can go together in the same sentence to begin with, which is very, very important, right? First one's all about the, you know, kind of apologetics of it all, the breaking down the Bible verses, the history, the culture, and all that kind of stuff. Second one is where we get a little bit, more into what you might experience along that kind of journey. So definitely go check those out if you're curious about Christian witchcraft and want to know how that works. If you don't want to get a book just yet, that's fine. Go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you want to support the work that I do and also get these videos 2 weeks early and ad-free, all you got to do is head over to my Patreon, where you can get a whole lot of stuff for a low price of like $10 a month, to be honest. All the fun writing projects aside, the reason I'm bringing up my vampire book especially is because, again, it's for the Catholic girlies especially. It's for the occult girlies, the weird girlies, the, memento mori girlies, the messy ones, and the ones who are probably going to be familiar with what the hell liturgy even means. Now, when I say liturgy, as someone who grew up Catholic, as someone who's currently Episcopal, I mean exactly what the dictionary definition says, which is public Christian worship, very specifically the Eucharistic rite, okay? The Eucharistic Mass, the celebration of the Eucharist, that happens in a Catholic or, basically any kind of liturgical church. There is more than just Catholics that do this, right? There's also Orthodox, there's also, Lutherans, and again, Episcopalians. There's all these kinds of denominations that follow that liturgical format. And what the liturgical format is, very simply, is just a consistent way of getting people in and out of that church every Sunday. Okay, you understand? I don't know what the hell some of y'all Pentecostals, Baptists, whatever the hell are doing, but if I have to be in the pew for longer than exactly 55 minutes, I will be angry. I will be very upset. I want a tight ship, okay? Run that shit to the minute, down the line, off we go, okay? When I walk into church every Sunday or every other Sunday, because Sunday's also my laundry day, I know exactly what to expect. I know exactly the itinerary, exactly how it's going to go down. And in fact, my church especially is really cool because they even hand out little bulletins. They hand out the little bulletins that are like, hey, the bolded parts are for you to respond when the priest says stuff, and here are our readings so you can read along and it's all in one spot for you, all right? It's very nice. And in this format, in a liturgical fashion, what you're going to run into is basically a system that was designed to help lay people get through the Bible, even though a majority of lay people, not only one, could not read at all, period, but two, could not read Latin, which for a long time the Bible was in, right? For a long time, it wasn't really allowed to have the Bible in anything other than Latin. These readings, these kind of selections of the Bible, are read out every single week, and they're based on a schedule of readings. So again, the Catholic Church is not a situation, nor is any liturgical church a situation where the priest is just going to get up and start hooting and hollering and saying whatever the hell he wants on that given day. It's not going to happen. In the homily, which is like the maybe 10 minutes that the priest gets in the entire hour to like talk his shit and make his own personal points and his own personal reflections on the readings, you know, maybe we'll get a little something about the present day or whatever we're all going through at the time. But for the most part, liturgy is meant to kind of bring you through the Bible as a layperson with those, you know, selected snippets. So there'll always be in this setting, there'll be a reading from the Old Testament, one of the prophets, Exodus, something like that. And there'll be a reading from the epistles, which is everything after the gospel, right? All of Paul's writings, 1 Peter, all that kind of stuff. And then the most important one will be the gospel reading. It's going to come from one of those 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Now, I don't know about other liturgical churches, but in mine, that one's also, you could tell it's the most special because that's the one where the priest has to walk down the aisle with the big red book in his hands of the gospel, right? He's got just the gospel in that red book that he carries down to the center of the aisle. He reads it out to everyone in the center of the church, and then yay, hooray, and we move on. That consistency is key. Because when you go into a church and you do the whole thing, right, the sit, stand, kneels, and you start with the collect, maybe we all pray together and say stuff. When you start with, the Lord be with you and with your spirit, okay, great. When you get through the readings and you speak a psalm aloud with everyone, or you respond by half verse, right, so someone will read the first verse, everyone says the second, and then you get through the homily and you kind of reflect a little bit, and then you do the prayers for the people, praying for those who are sick, praying for those who are hurt, praying for the world, all this kind of stuff. When you do the whole exchange of peace, peace be with you, la la la, all of that is build up to the main event of any liturgical service, which is the consecration, the transubstantiation, and the distribution of the Eucharist. All of that, basically entire hour, leads up to building the entire congregation's energy and focus towards the literal transformation of the bread and the wine into body and blood, because that is ritual magic up there. That is a serious alchemizing process, spiritually, literally, however far you want to go with that. That is something that requires a lot of attention, a lot of prayer, a lot of presence. And you can't really just kind of walk into church and la 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 and slap it together and call it done. You got to be intentional with it. You got to be mindful with it. You got to be present with it. And that is the point of the liturgy, going through all those steps consistently each time, getting up to that point. Right after the Eucharist, that's it. There's the blessing and dismissal, and then you're out in the lobby having coffee and coffee cake that someone's grandma brought in, and it's great. So quickly, let's break it down. The anatomy of the liturgy goes pretty much something like that. It goes, okay, collect, as in we all come together. We all say like, oh, hello, we're all here. Literally the collect is like, hey, God who did these great things, hear us now, come sit with us while we do our thing and honor you, right? That's the collect when we're all in the zone. And then we get into the readings that have some kind of theme, some kind of thing going on. Again, in a liturgical setting, they rotate on a 3-year schedule. So every 3 years, we go through these certain readings that have to do with certain themes that kind of correlate a lot, honestly, with the rhythms of life, right? The seasons and the holidays and all these other things. They give us something to think about, something to meditate on, something to chew on, something to hone in on, right? Those 3 readings. And then we get a little bit of a discussion and a little bit of a more consideration. And then we start offering prayers. Prayers being a form of energy, right? Prayers often being their own spells, praying for people. There are very specifically worded spells, right? There are litanies. There are all kinds of different specifically formatted spells where people, respond to the person leading it, right? So they'll be like, hey, we pray for this, and they'll respond. Or the litanies as they go, right? Like, Saint whatever, pray for us, this and that, pray for us. It's a back and forth. It's literally ping-ponging the energy, kind of building it, snowballing it. and then the peace be with you, that kinship, and then all of it up into that Eucharistic rite. You know what I mean? You've got all of that, and you got people. That's when the collection plates come around, you give money. So, right, offering, sacrifice, prayer, all of these things all happening, all building up to that moment. That is the anatomy of liturgy, and I tell you right now, that is also the anatomy of ritual. When I do my rituals, right, and I've got a few clips here of the way I do my money spells, I have borrowed the liturgical format exactly for that reason. I start right with gratitude, so that's my Old Testament slot, is a prayer of gratitude for all of the good luck that I've had the month before, and then in the epistle section, really, is actually where I put my gospel section. Always, 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 after I do my, prayers with whatever herbs I've put out, and I've invoking the spirits and the, energies and all these things of like Saint Basil and Saint Dill and whatever ingredients I've put in my money bowl, I also then recite some of the gospel, very specifically Matthew 6:24 through 34, to remind myself that money is not the be-all end-all, and that even if I'm asking for sustainment, it's not about the money itself, right? So to remind myself of my priorities and what the actual reason for the spell is. And then I end with prayers for the people. That's I guess my third reading spot. I start doing the prayers for the people, prayers for the oppressed, prayers for the neglected and the downtrodden, prayers for the imprisoned. To remind myself also that as much as I'm asking for help, there are people who need more help than me. And I do that consistently every single month, just as consistently as the priest does his liturgical service on every Sunday. When we look at the liturgy, when we look at the liturgical format of a typical Catholic or Episcopal or any kind of Sunday Mass, just hour-long service, you find in there a beautiful ritual format that is so easy and good to fall back on when you are struggling to make your own ritual formats. Because some people, I think, when it comes to witchcraft, they might think that rituals have to be these long, complicated things that spiral in and out, that have all these steps. But I'm telling you that the reason we're looking at this anatomy right now is specifically because the entire point of ritual is to reduce mental load. The whole point of having this consistent, every week, same tempo, same beat, easy expectation, is to reduce the mental load so that you can focus on what you're actually trying to do and not how you're doing it. Some people might not like this format of church service. I know that, like, I've talked to Baptists and stuff who can't get into it, and they would rather just hear, like, some talking they think is too stiff. But this mental load thing is the point. In a liturgical setting, you're not supposed to sit here just focusing on whatever the hell the pastor is yapping about. You're not supposed to be all sucked into the pastor. It's not about the pastor. It's about the rhythm and the familiarity of that structure, and all of the focus is coming on really those readings that other people in the congregation are coming up to read. The priest really only pops up to give his 10-minute homily and, break up the bread and the wine and all that, and that's mostly it. He's here to kind of guide He's here to guide the congregation as they do their readings and stuff, and kind of help things along and introduce new sections. He's here to segue, but it's not about the priest. It's not about him. It's about the reflection and the messages and really tuning in and experiencing that moment of divine connection. And when you reduce mental load by making it consistent, the same exact steps every Sunday, you don't have to worry about, like, what part is it? What are we doing? What are we saying? How much longer? What's going on? You know exactly when it's going to end. You know exactly where you are in the tempo. You know exactly what's coming next. You don't have to think about it. You just go. And you know exactly how long it's taking. You know exactly how you're progressing. And you know that the flow is consistent. That's the point of the liturgy, and that's the point of ritual. When you make a ritual and you have all of these steps and all these tools and all these things and all these, weird things you got to do, when you got to spin around in a circle and clap your hands and hop on one foot and whatever the fuck else people do, doing more, adding more complication to the ritual defeats the purpose of ritual. When I do rituals of any kind, I remember that structure. I remember, okay, cool, step 1, step 2, step 3, right? I remember, okay, introduction, starting point, main event, second point, right? Act 2 of this is what I need, this is what I want, and here's a reading that correlates with that. And then Act 3, the round off, kind of close it up, you know, extend my graces out to anyone else. And there you go. This kind of ritual format makes it so that you don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about what step is next and this and that and up and down. You can simply sink into the energy that you are building. You can build it consistently, first of all. Second of all, you can really sink into it, feel it, work with it. And third of all, you don't have to contribute more attention than necessary to the steps themselves. You don't have to distract yourself. You don't have to lose the thread of your energy. You've all got it right there. And that's the point. Granted, this format does work especially well if you are doing something like, say, a monthly money spell or something that you're going to do consistently every month. That way, you know exactly what to do. You know exactly the flow. You can just get into it. You don't have to, you know, spend so much time wondering, like, should I do this? Should I do that? Each individual ritual might be a little bit differently, but I really think that if you focus on those points, that 3-act structure, right, on the greetings and the thanks, then on the main event, then on the final prayers and round off, that is the basic structure of a liturgy. That is the basic structure, in my opinion, of good ritual. And as far as I'm concerned, I do think, at least I've heard around the grapevine, that apparently even the folks in Thelema, which is its own, like, you know, vintage occult situation, even those folks understood that. Even those folks, or maybe even Crowley himself, understood that and incorporated that into their own, you know, ritual situations, because liturgy has existed for, at this point, over 1,000 years. It's a very solid format. It's a very reliable structure. It's a very easy to follow structure. And we can cross-compare as well, right? We have a lot of interesting things that show up as tools across them both. In a liturgy, you'll have a bell, you'll have candles, you'll have the book, you'll have, right, the chalice of the wine, you'll have the bread itself, the ritual offering, one might say. You've got all those things, and then in a witchcraft setting, especially in the more vintage ones, right, like early Wicca or, you know, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, likewise, just like the Magician card in Tarot, you're going to have a lot of those things too. The chalice, the sword, the wand, the pentacle, right? The point isn't so much in the minutiae, in the details, as it is in those 3 acts, and then, of course, the connecting, the segues between them, right? Opening in with the collect into the first part, then segueing into a song. That's what the Psalms are, a song, maybe singing a poem or reciting something small, segue into Act 2. And then, right, getting into a more serious disposition, or doing whatever it is that you're doing, or doing a come down or some kind of like physical movement, right, walking into the middle of the church with the gospel, or just, you know, doing whatever prayers / thing you're doing here, maneuvering that energy, offering those prayers, whatever, here into the 3rd act. And then, of course, the round off being the offerings or whatever it is you're doing, really bringing those prayers up and flowing magic back down, and then closing it out, giving thanks, and doing a blessing and dismissal. They're very much one-to-one. They're very much tools that you could and should be using to structure your own thing. That demystifies the ritual process a lot. It makes it so that if you have to do any kind of spell, a banishment, a money spell, a love spell, any spell you can think of, it's going to be a lot easier to construct in your mind on that 3-act liturgical structure than if you tried to just kind of piece cobble a bunch of stuff together from all kinds of different sources. So take it from me, you don't have to reinvent the wheel by any means, like at all. You do not have to do that. What you do have to do, though, is consider what each piece is doing in your practice, what each part of these rituals and spells is actually supposed to do. Is it supposed to offer gratitude and address your deity or whatever? Is it supposed to really set the intention of the entire ritual? Is it supposed to, right, pay it forward, extend it out, round it off? Is it supposed to sever and dismiss whatever's going on? There you go. But I can tell you, when you compare them both, that does seem to be it. The welcome, the greeting, the, you know, thematic readings tied together, then the big event, and then the dismissal. It's all a build-up. You're building that energy, you're building that focus, you're building that presence, into what it is you're trying to do. And this can look different from everyone. If you're saying, oh, 3-act structure, I don't know, I don't like that, you don't have to use it, but definitely do consider, again, that the point of the ritual is to take your mind off of all of the steps, to make it kind of like natural and, easy, intuitive, to be able to not constantly have to think about what the next step is, and instead to just be present and build all of that focus and energy and worship and intention all up into a crescendo, into the final note that casts the spell. That's what you got to think about. I wanted to very quickly give my thoughts on that, because that's something that I feel like a lot of witches don't use. A lot of witches don't consider that, by all means, roll into a Catholic church on a Saturday and get a taste for how that ritual works. Go into an Episcopal church, Catholic church, any kind of liturgical church like that. Just sit there for a Sunday and participate and enjoy. You know what I mean? Just experience what this literally over 1,000-year-old ritual format looks like, and take notes on what it feels like when you are in it. You will learn some things that may be very helpful to your own practice. I'm just saying. With all that said, I have other stuff to do, like write the rest of that book. And I'll see you guys next time for some more good chats. And especially now that finally we're getting to a point where I can get back into goofing and gabbing with y'all on all kinds of fun topics. Let me know if there's something in the witchy world you want me to talk about specifically. I will have my eyes peeled for shenanigans, and we will talk next time. See ya.